My jealous boyfriend accused me of being in love with my dead twin brother, and when he secretly deleted him from my Instagram, I finally saw who he really was. I used to believe that grief came in waves, painful but fleeting, crashing and pulling back again until one day the tide was gentle enough to stand in. But 6 years after my twin brother Sam died, I learned that sometimes grief isn't the ocean at all. It's air. It's everywhere. Invisible but constant. Something you breathe without thinking. You learn to live around it, but it never really leaves. Sam and I were born 7 minutes apart. He used to joke that those 7 minutes were his seniority pass, his right to call me kiddo, even though we share the same birth date, the same face, and sometimes it felt the same thoughts. Growing up, we were that pair, inseparable, infuriatingly close, finishing each other's sentences before anyone else could. He was louder, bolder, the kind of person who entered a room and instantly became its gravity. I was quieter, the observer, content to orbit around his light. Sam was obsessed with stories, music, people, tiny details that others missed. He loved talking to strangers, learning about their lives, their accents, their favorite words. That's probably why he started teaching English to ESL students during college. He had this patience about him, this ability to make people feel comfortable even when they stumbled through words. And he recorded everything. His phone was always up, filming, narrating, documenting. Our lives were stitched into his Instagram. Thousands of photos, videos, snippets of laughter, inside jokes, and everyday chaos. Then one morning, he didn't come home. The accident happened on the freeway, just a few miles outside our city. They said a truck jackknifed in heavy rain, and everything after that was a chain reaction of twisted metal and shattered glass. It made the local news, one of the largest pileups in state history. I remember sitting on the couch, phone in my hand, hearing the anchor say there were multiple fatalities, and feeling my stomach drop as if gravity had forgotten how to work. I kept calling him, over and over, 27 times before the police called back. They said he died instantly, that there was no pain, that he didn't even know it was happening, as if that was supposed to comfort me. The days after blurred into one long gray smear. Funeral arrangements, paperwork, family members I hadn't seen in years hugging me too tight, saying they couldn't imagine losing a twin. Neither could I, because you don't just lose a sibling, you lose the mirror that reflected you back. For weeks, I felt like half a person walking around pretending to be whole. And then, one night, when the house was quiet and my body was too exhausted to cry anymore, I opened Instagram. His page was still there, bright, chaotic, alive. His smile frozen mid-laugh, his captions full of terrible puns, his singing videos that always ended with a goofy wink. For the first time in days, I heard his voice again. It was a short clip of him explaining idioms for his ESL followers, but it didn't matter what he said. It was him. And for a few minutes, the ache in my chest loosened. That became my routine. Every night before bed, I'd scroll through his posts. Sometimes I'd leave comments like he could still see them. You'd laugh at what mom said today. Or, your cat still sleeps on my pillow. It wasn't rational, but grief rarely is. Some nights I'd watch one of his videos until I fell asleep with the phone still glowing beside me. I know people say it's unhealthy, living in the past like that, but it wasn't about refusing to move on. It was about remembering, about hearing his voice on days when the silence felt too loud. Over the years, I got better at functioning again. I finished my degree, got a stable job, even started seeing people. But no matter how full my life became, I always found time for Sam. Sometimes just a few minutes of scrolling. Sometimes just a quick glance at one of his ESL lessons where he smiled and said, "You're doing great." I used to imagine he was talking to me. 2 years ago, I met my boyfriend, let's call him Mark, at a mutual friend's housewarming. He was charming, steady, and funny in a dad joke kind of way. After years of guarding myself, I was surprised how quickly I felt comfortable around him. He listened when I talked about Sam, even looked through a few of his posts, said things like, "He sounds amazing." At first, it felt like he understood. But as the relationship deepened, his comments started to change. Subtle at first. "You still watch his videos?" Or "You talk about him a lot." Once, when I had one of Sam's old songs playing while cooking, Mark laughed awkwardly and said, "It's kind of weird listening to another guy sing while I'm here." I brushed it off, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. The more time passed, the more uneasy he seemed whenever I mentioned Sam. I told him it helped me, that it was my way of keeping my brother close. But he'd roll his eyes and mutter something about living in the past. One night, he asked how often I looked at Sam's page. When I said, almost every night, he frowned and said, "That's not healthy. You should try moving on." "I am moving on," I told him. I miss him. "That doesn't go away." He sighed like I'd disappointed him. "You can't keep living like this forever. You're stuck." The thing about grief is that people who haven't been through it think there's a timeline. They think healing means forgetting. Mark wasn't cruel, at least not in the obvious way, but he didn't get it. He wanted the version of me that existed before the accident, the one who laughed easily, who didn't carry ghosts in her pocket. Still, I tried. I really did. I promised him I'd cut back, that I'd stop looking every night. And for a while, I managed. I'd tell myself, just one video tonight, and then put my phone away. I started reading before bed instead, or scrolling through new recipes. It felt manageable. I thought maybe he was right. that I was finally learning how to live without needing those nightly visits to Sam's page. Then one night, after dinner, Mark came up behind me while I was on my phone and wrapped his arms around me. He kissed my cheek and said, "Proud of you, babe. You've been doing better." I smiled, relieved. "Thanks," I said. "It's hard, but yeah, I'm trying." He nodded and said, "Good. You don't need all that old stuff cluttering your mind." I didn't realize then how literal he meant that. A few weeks later, everything shattered again. It was late, and I was lying in bed scrolling through Instagram like usual. I wanted to watch one of Sam's old ESL videos, the one where he jokingly pretends to interview himself about his favorite ice cream flavors. But when I searched his name, nothing came up. At first, I thought maybe Instagram glitched. Accounts get deleted sometimes. But when I texted my sister, she replied instantly, "No, his account's still there." I can see it. My chest tightened. I refreshed, logged out, logged back in, nothing. Gone. I called Mark, who was in the living room watching TV. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Something's wrong with my Instagram." Sam's account disappeared. He didn't even look up from the screen. "Oh yeah. I blocked him." I blinked. "You what?" He turned toward me like it was no big deal. "I blocked your brother's account on your profile. You needed help moving on. You keep going back to it, and it's not healthy." It felt like the floor tilted under me. "You blocked him? Without telling me?" "Relax," he said. "It's just an account. Just an account. Just the last living trace of my twin brother. The one piece of him I could still see and hear." My throat closed, but I managed. "You had no right." "I did it because I love you," he said, completely serious. "You're obsessed with him. You talk about him more than you talk about us. It's weird." I stared at him, the words barely processing. "He's my brother. My dead brother. I'm not obsessed, I'm grieving." Then he said it. The sentence that will haunt me for the rest of my life. "You're not grieving. You're in love with him." I think I stopped breathing. My body went cold all at once, like every nerve froze midair. "What did you just say?" He shrugged. "You heard me. The way you talk about him, the way you look at those videos, it's not normal." I wanted to scream. To throw something. To make him understand that this wasn't just some guy to me. This was my other half, my mirror, the person who knew me better than anyone ever could. But all I could do was whisper, "You're sick." He stood up, defensive now. "Don't turn this on me. You need help. I'm trying to save you from this obsession." That's when I realized it wasn't about grief for him. It was about control. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in bed scrolling through my empty feed, staring at the space where Sam's videos used to be, feeling like he'd died all over again. I texted my sister again in the morning, asked her to check if she could still see the account. She could. She even sent me a screenshot. My brother's smiling face stared back from her phone like nothing had changed, except everything had. When I confronted Mark again, he brushed it off like it was a joke gone wrong. "You're overreacting," he said. I was kidding when I said that stuff about being in love with him. "You need to chill." I told him to leave me alone. He laughed, tried to tickle me, as if that would undo what he'd done, and said, "Come on, babe, don't be mad." It's not a big deal, but it was. It was the biggest deal in the world. Because in one click, he'd taken away the only thing that made me feel close to my brother. And worse, he made me feel ashamed for missing him. And that's when something in me started to break. Not the kind of break that makes you collapse. The kind that wakes you up. That night, after he'd tried to tickle me into forgiving him, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried quietly into a towel. I didn't want him to hear me because I didn't want to give him that satisfaction. The proof that his actions still held power over me. But the tears came anyway. It wasn't just about the Instagram block anymore. It was about the way he had taken something sacred, something private, and twisted it into something shameful. I sat on the bathroom floor, hugging my knees, trying to piece together when things had started to feel wrong. We'd been together for almost 2 years. For most of that time, he'd been kind, attentive, the kind of man who remembered how I took my coffee and texted me good morning before work. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, it changed. Little comments disguised as jokes. Gentle suggestions that were really instructions. He didn't tell me what to wear, but he'd make comments like, "You don't need makeup, you're pretty or natural." Or, "Why post that picture? You don't need random people liking it." I used to think he was just protective. Now I knew better. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my phone on the nightstand like a wound. I wanted to message my sister, to scroll through Sam's post from her account, but even that felt tainted now. My brother's face, the one place I found comfort, was now tangled up with disgust and betrayal. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off, only to wake up to the sound of Mark making breakfast like nothing had happened. Pancakes, coffee, that same humming he did when he wanted to pretend everything was normal. When I walked into the kitchen, he smiled as if the night before had been a minor misunderstanding. "Morning, babe," he said, sliding a plate toward me. "Made your favorite." I stared at the pancakes, the smell of butter suddenly nauseating. "You blocked my brother's account," I said quietly. He sighed. "We're still on that?" "Yes," I said. "Because you crossed a line." He put the spatula down, turned to me with that infuriatingly calm expression. I already told you I did it for you. You're obsessed with your grief. I'm just trying to help you move forward. You don't help people by stealing from them, I snapped. You took something that wasn't yours to touch. He rolled his eyes. God, you're dramatic. It's just social media. No, it's him. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. It's my brother, and you knew that. You knew how much it meant. He shrugged as if my pain was boring him. You talk about him like he's still here. It's creepy sometimes. I'm sorry, but it is, I wanted to scream. You think loving my twin brother makes me creepy? I didn't say that, he said defensively, though that's exactly what he meant. I just think you're stuck. And I'm not going to sit by while you keep clinging to a ghost. Then leave, I said. If you can't handle me missing him, then leave. He didn't. Instead, he gave a condescending smile and said, You're emotional right now. I'll give you some space to cool off. Then he kissed the top of my head like I was a child throwing a tantrum and walked out of the kitchen. I stood there, shaking. It wasn't anger at that point. It was disbelief. The kind of disbelief that makes you question your own reality. How could someone who claimed to love me be so cruel, so dismissive, so utterly blind to what I'd lost? Later that afternoon, I called my sister. I told her everything. How he'd blocked Sam's account, how he'd accused me of being in love with my brother, how he brushed it off like it was nothing. She didn't even let me finish before saying, He's jealous of your dead brother. You realize how insane that sounds, right? I know, I said quietly. I didn't want to believe it. Get him out of your house, she said. Now, her certainty was grounding. I wasn't crazy for being upset. Someone finally said what I'd been too afraid to admit, that this wasn't grief anymore. It was control. Still, I needed to see for myself what else he might have done. After she hung up, I unlocked my phone and checked my accounts. He hadn't just blocked Sam. He'd deleted photos, unfollowed old friends, even turned off comment notifications on some of my posts. It was subtle but invasive. Every change was a quiet message. You're mine now. Your past doesn't matter. I felt sick. I confronted him again that evening when he came home from work. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, Why did you change things on my account? He didn't even hesitate. Because you spend too much time on it. You get lost in it. So you decided to fix me. I decided to help you, he said. There's a difference, I laughed bitterly. No, there isn't. You don't fix grief by deleting memories. You don't fix grief by worshiping them either, he snapped back. That was the first time he raised his voice at me. The words hit harder than they should have. Worshipping, as if remembering Sam was some kind of sin. Something inside me snapped. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and changed my passcode. Then I deleted the smart lock app that gave him access to our apartment. I could hear him pacing behind me, asking what I was doing, but I didn't answer. I was done explaining pain to someone who didn't believe it was real. He tried apologizing later, though his apology sounded more like damage control. I just want what's best for you, he said, holding my hands. You've been through so much. I can't lose you to something that isn't even alive anymore. That something was my brother, I said. And you didn't lose me. You destroyed my trust. He stared at me, unblinking. You're overreacting. Those 3 words sealed it. I knew then that there was no fixing this. No amount of explanation would make him understand that grief isn't logical. It's not supposed to be. It's messy and human and sacred. And he had trampled all over it because his ego couldn't stand sharing space with a memory. That night, while he slept, I packed a small bag with essentials, wallet, charger, a few clothes, and hid it under the bed. I didn't plan to leave yet, but I needed to know I could. Just having it there made me feel lighter, safer. The next day, I met my sister for coffee. She hugged me so tight I almost cried again. You look exhausted, she said. I am, I admitted. He makes me feel crazy. You're not crazy, she said firmly. You're grieving. And he's punishing you for it. I told her I was scared. Not that he'd hurt me physically. He never had. But that he'd find a way to make me doubt myself again. She nodded, then said something I'll never forget. People like him don't need to hit you to control you. They just make you question your right to feel. That sentence stayed with me. Because that's exactly what he had done. Every time I tried to defend my grief, he'd twist it into something irrational, obsessive, even dirty. And I believed him, until now. When I got home that evening, I found him on the couch scrolling through his phone. Hey, he said casually. You look better. I talked to my sister, I said. His eyes narrowed. Oh? She said I should spend more time with family. He smirked. You mean the same sister who thinks you should break up with me? Yes, I said. That one. His smirk faltered. What are you saying? I'm saying I need space. Real space, he laughed like I'd just told a joke. You're serious? Yes. For a moment, he just stared at me, then leaned back and said, Fine, take all the space you want. I'll give you a few days to calm down. He said it like he was being generous, like this was his decision, not mine. When he left for work the next morning, I did what I should have done weeks ago. I changed every password, removed his access to the building, and called the leasing office to revoke his key privileges. My hands trembled the whole time, but by the end of it, I could finally breathe. Then I sat on the couch, logged into my sister's account, and opened Sam's page. There he was. My brother? Laughing, singing, alive in pixels. I watched one of his videos, the one where he says, "You're doing great," in that warm, teasing tone, and for the first time in months, I let myself sob without apology. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't broken. I was grieving, and grief, I realized, didn't make me weak. It made me human. When Mark texted that night, I didn't answer. When he sent another message saying I was being ridiculous, I turned off my phone. For once, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace, and deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of getting my life and my brother's memory back. I thought that when I locked him out, when I changed every password and shut every door he could enter, that it would finally end. But people like Mark don't walk away quietly. They linger like smoke sneaking under the cracks. The first few days without him were oddly calm. My apartment felt bigger, quieter. I woke up to sunlight instead of tension. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself before speaking. I spent my mornings scrolling through my brother's Instagram again from my sister's account, listening to his voice while I made coffee. It was bittersweet but healing. I thought maybe this is what peace feels like. Then the messages started. At first they came through mutual friends. "Hey," one of them texted. "Mark's worried about you. He says you've been emotional. He wants to give you space." Space, that word again. The one he always used when he really meant control. I didn't reply. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. But the next day, another message came. "He feels terrible. He said he was just trying to help you. Maybe hear him out?" No, I wasn't doing that again. I blocked the number and muted every group chat that still had his name in it. The same night, I got a DM from a burner account. No profile picture, no followers. "You're being ridiculous." It was just Instagram. My stomach dropped. I didn't need confirmation, it was his tone. The clipped phrasing, the dismissive way he turned everything into an overreaction. I didn't reply, just reported it and blocked it. But for hours afterward, I kept checking my locks. By the end of the week, I felt both freer and more paranoid than ever. Grief had always been heavy, but this was different. It wasn't mourning a person. It was untangling myself from someone who tried to rewrite my grief into guilt. One evening, I sat with my sister in her living room, watching the rain streak down the window. She handed me tea and said, "You know, you could stay here for a while." "I'm okay," I told her, though I wasn't sure if that was true. She studied me carefully. "You don't have to be strong all the time." "I'm not trying to be," I said. "I just don't want him to think he scared me out of my own home." She nodded. "Then we make sure he can't." That night, she helped me install a door camera and change the locks completely. It wasn't paranoia. It was protection. Just in case. The next morning, I woke up to a voice message from another mutual friend, someone I'd known longer than Mark. Her tone was hesitant, careful. "Hey, I don't want to take sides, but Mark's been saying some weird things. He told a few people that you're unstable and that you were obsessed with your brother in a, not normal way." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Even after everything he'd done, he was still trying to twist the story. My grief had become gossip. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat down and opened my notes app, typing everything out. Every message, every conversation, every red flag I'd ignored. I wrote until my fingers hurt. Maybe it was pointless, maybe no one would ever read it, but I needed to see the truth written down. I wasn't crazy. He was cruel. That same evening, I went through the old screenshots I had of Sam and me. Photos, voice notes, memories. Then I remembered something. Months earlier, Sam and I had used Instagram's direct messages as our main way to talk. We chatted almost daily before his accident. Maybe those messages were still there. My heart pounded as I logged into my sister's account again and opened his DMs. For a moment, I thought it wouldn't load. But then it did. There they were, thousands of old messages. Memes, song links, random good morning notes. And then, buried in the scroll, one last message from him. "Don't forget to live, okay? Promise me." I sat back, tears blurring my screen. It felt like he was speaking directly through time. I could almost hear his voice again, the teasing lilt, the warmth. I whispered, "I promise." And for the first time since his death, I felt a flicker of closure. I realized then that what Mark had taken wasn't just access to an account. He'd taken my ability to heal on my own terms. He'd made my grief about him. And I refused to let that be the end of my story. When I got home later that night, there was a note taped to my door. My heart skipped. It was folded, handwritten, familiar scrawl. "You're overreacting. I'll give you a few days to calm down." No signature, but I didn't need one. I called my sister immediately. "He was here," I said, voice shaking. "He left a note." She drove over within 20 minutes, still in her pajamas. We filed a building report the next morning. Management took copies of the note, promised to keep an eye on the cameras. They found footage later that confirmed what I already knew. Mark standing outside my door around midnight, looking both angry and self-satisfied. He hadn't tried to come in, but the message was clear: "I can still reach you." That's when something inside me hardened. Fear turned into anger. Not the kind that consumes you, but the kind that protects you. I sent him one final message from a new number. Do not contact me again. You are not welcome near me or my home. Any further contact will be considered harassment. Then I blocked him everywhere, permanently. The next few days blurred together, but slowly, life began to return to normal. I started therapy. My therapist, an older woman with kind eyes and a soft voice, told me something that stuck. Grief is love with nowhere to go. But control, that's fear with nowhere to hide. She was right. Mark had feared my connection to my brother because it was something he couldn't touch, something pure and untamed. People like him can't stand not being the center of gravity. In therapy, I talked about Sam, his laugh, his voice, the songs he used to hum when he cooked. I talked about how the apartment still smelled faintly of the candle he once gave me. I talked about the guilt of still being here when he wasn't. And for the first time, I talked about Mark without flinching. When I told my therapist what he said, that I was in love with my twin brother, she looked genuinely pained. That's projection, she said gently. People who make accusations that extreme are usually hiding their own insecurities. He couldn't understand your grief, so he decided to make it ugly. That way he didn't have to feel small next to it. That made sense. It didn't make it hurt less, but it made it make sense. 2 weeks passed before I heard about him again. A mutual friend texted me a screenshot. Mark had posted some vague self-improvement rant on his social media about toxic people stuck in the past. I didn't even finish reading it. I blocked him there too. My focus was elsewhere now, on rebuilding, on reconnecting with my sister. We started talking every night again like we used to in college. She'd send me photos of our childhood home, little clips of family gatherings. One night she said, "You know, Sam would have hated that guy." I laughed through tears. "Yeah," I said. "He'd have written a whole song about it." That became our thing, talking about what Sam would have said. It was comforting, not painful anymore. Like we were sharing him instead of mourning him. A week later, something incredible happened. With help from a few kind strangers online, I finally regained access to Sam's Instagram. I had to send documents to Instagram proving his passing, our relationship, and a bunch of other things. But it worked. They transferred ownership of the account to me. When I logged in and saw my name under account owner, I burst into tears. Every photo, every message, every silly caption, it was all still there. Safe. Mine again. I spent that evening backing everything up. Screen recording his videos, saving his songs, downloading every post into a folder labeled Sam Forever. I even made a private highlight called Light, filled with his old teaching clips. It felt like bringing him home. I wanted to tell someone, but there was no one to tell except my sister. So I texted her. Got into Sam's account, finally. She called instantly, her voice breaking with joy. "That's amazing. He'd be proud of you." I miss him," I whispered. "I know," she said softly. "Me too." That night, I sat on my balcony with my laptop, scrolling through years of my brother's life, lit by the glow of the screen. For the first time in a long time, the ache in my chest felt different. Not as sharp. More like warmth. I realized I wasn't just holding on to grief anymore. I was holding on to love. And love, I decided, doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. As for Mark, well, the silence from him was the best gift I could have asked for. But even as peace returned, a part of me knew he wasn't done trying to rewrite the story. Because men like him never really believe they're the villains. And soon I'd learn that control doesn't disappear quietly. It always demands one last word. When people talk about closure, they make it sound like an ending. A door gently shutting, the sound fading as you walk away. But I learned that closure isn't quiet. It's a reclamation. It's the sound of you locking the door yourself this time. After I got access to Sam's account again, the world seemed to tilt back toward balance. For weeks, I'd lived with this gnawing sense of absence, like a room with one missing wall. Seeing his page again, his smile, his voice, his unfiltered joy, felt like rebuilding that wall brick by brick. I didn't scroll for hours anymore. I didn't need to. I could look when I wanted, stop when I needed, and each time it felt less like pain and more like presence. But just as I started to breathe easier, the last echo of Mark's control found me. It was a Thursday night. I just finished dinner and was answering emails when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I ignore calls from strangers, but some anxious intuition, made me answer. "Hello?" There was silence for a second, then a familiar sigh. "It's me." My pulse quickened. "How did you get this number?" "I just wanted to talk," he said. His voice was calm, practiced. "I think things got out of hand." I closed my eyes. "Mark, you need to stop calling me." "I told you." I know," he interrupted quickly, that fake softness creeping back in. "I just wanted to apologize. I shouldn't have said what I did. I was jealous, okay? You were always talking about him and I didn't understand. For a moment, I almost believed him. His tone was familiar. The same one he used to use after small fights. The "I love you, let's forget it" tone that used to make me cave. But not anymore. "You didn't understand," I said carefully, "and instead of trying to, you punished me for it. You turned my grief into something dirty," he scoffed. "I didn't punish you. I was trying to help." "By accusing me of being in love with my dead brother?" I snapped. By blocking his account, deleting his pictures, gaslighting me for missing him, he went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was sharp. "You're still making this about you." "It is about me," I said, voice steady now. "You violated my privacy, my memories, and my trust. And you think you get to waltz back into my life with an apology?" "No, fine," he said, his calm shattering. "You want to play the victim? Go ahead. But you'll end up alone." "I'd rather be alone than controlled," I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt free. It was the first time I'd ended the conversation instead of letting him dictate when it was over. That one click, ending the call, felt like reclaiming years of silence. The next day, I told my sister. She looked proud and furious all at once. "He's still trying to twist it," she said. "You did the right thing cutting him off." "I know," I said, though my stomach still churned. He sounded so normal at first, like he really thought he'd done nothing wrong. "Of course he did," she said. "That's how people like him survive. They rewrite the story until they're the hero." That sentence stayed with me. They rewrite the story until they're the hero. That's exactly what he had tried to do. And I wasn't going to let him write another word. A week later, I decided to start fresh. I cleaned the apartment from top to bottom. New sheets, new curtains, rearranged furniture. The space felt lighter, like it finally belonged to me again. I bought a small plant and put it by the window, naming it Sam Jr., because my brother had once joked that plants only survive if you talk to them. Each morning, I'd sit by the window, sip my coffee, and play one of Sam's old songs softly in the background. It wasn't ritual anymore, it was connection. The difference between living in the past and carrying it forward. My therapist encouraged me to write letters I'd never send. One to Sam, one to Mark. The one to Sam came easily. I wrote about how I missed him, about how the world had gotten louder since he left, about how I hoped he'd be proud of me for surviving. The letter to Mark was harder. I stared at the blank page for a long time before writing. "You tried to shrink me. You mistook my sadness for obsession, my love for sickness, my memories for weakness. But I am not the ghost you think I am. I survived both loss and you." When I finished, I folded the paper and burned it on my balcony, watching the ashes scatter into the night. It wasn't revenge, it was release. A few weeks later, I started running again. I hadn't done that since before Sam's death. The first morning, I ran along the river. The air was crisp, the city still half asleep. I played one of Sam's playlists through my headphones, his voice in between songs saying, "Don't quit halfway, lazybones," from one of his old joke recordings. I laughed out loud, startling a jogger nearby, and for the first time, the laughter didn't hurt. It felt alive. Then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, I got a message request on Instagram from someone named a Sam's Voice Project. The profile photo was a candle and a microphone. The message read, "Hi, I found your brother's ESL videos, and they've really helped me with my English. I didn't know he passed away. Thank you for keeping his account active. He taught me how to pronounce that." I'll never forget that. I stared at the message for a long time before smiling through tears. I replied, "He would have loved hearing that. Thank you." After that, more messages trickled in. Former students, followers, people who'd stumbled across his old videos. They thanked me for not deleting his page. They said his humor made learning easier. Some even sent clips of themselves repeating phrases he'd taught them. Sam was still teaching, still connecting. Even in death, his kindness rippled outward, and I realized something. The page wasn't just for me anymore. It was for everyone he'd touched. So I started curating his account, turning it into a small memorial/learning hub. I organized his old posts into highlights, songs, lessons, life. I posted a note explaining who he was, how much he'd meant, and that I was keeping the account alive in his honor. The response was overwhelming. Messages from strangers poured in, some from across the world. He helped me pass my English test. He made me believe I could speak fluently. He made learning fun. I felt proud. Not broken. Not stuck. Just proud. Months passed. Seasons shifted. I redecorated my apartment, started a small blog about grief and recovery, and even adopted a cat, black and white like the one Sam and I had growing up. I named him Echo. Life began to rebuild itself in small, deliberate pieces. Every now and then, I'd get a new follower request, usually genuine, sometimes bots, once even a blank profile that looked suspiciously like one of Mark's old burner accounts. I didn't hesitate anymore. Block. I didn't owe explanations to anyone. My peace was non-negotiable. The last time I heard Mark's name was through a coworker who'd gone to college with him. Apparently, he'd moved out of the city and was seeing someone new. I felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy, no lingering ache. Just a quiet hope that maybe somehow she'd see the signs sooner than I did. I didn't say that out loud, though. Some things are better left unsaid. A year later, on the anniversary of Sam's death, my sister and I drove to the ocean, the place he'd always loved most. We brought flowers and his old Bluetooth speaker. She played his favorite playlist while we sat in the sand, watching the waves swallow the horizon. At sunset, she turned to me and said, "You look lighter." I smiled. "I am." We scattered the flowers into the surf. The tide pulled them gently away, carrying color into the gray water. For a moment, I closed my eyes and imagined Sam there beside us, laughing at our attempts to sing along to his old favorite song. And in that moment, I realized something simple but profound. Grief doesn't end. It transforms. It becomes part of you. The soft ache that reminds you that you loved deeply, that you were lucky enough to have someone worth missing. When we got back home, I opened Instagram one last time that night. I went to Sam's page, scrolled through the old videos, and picked one at random. In it, he was teaching idioms. He smiled at the camera and said, "Remember, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Unless it's a sandwich." Then he laughed. That familiar, contagious laugh. I laughed too, alone in my apartment, but not lonely anymore. Then I posted a story from his account. A simple photo of the sea with the caption, "Still teaching. Still loved." And as I hit share, I realized that maybe closure wasn't a door closing after all. It was the sound of a voice, his voice, echoing back through time, reminding me that love doesn't disappear. It just finds new ways to stay.